Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode I'm going to show you how I made the tooling to make these side vents, both sides, which are opposite die sets. So I have noticed that on mine the perimeter and some of the vents are actually rotted out completely, so I want to figure out how to make this. As we can see, the perimeter is pretty sad and top of the vent is a little bit chewed out as well. So I'm just going to get to the drawing board now and figure out what type of dies I could make that would press these in and keep them all uniform. So my original thought was to get pieces laser cut individually and then get this perimeter piece laser cut, drill holes in that and then plug it to all these individual pieces and then clamp it together, have like a female and male die. But then that won't work, I'd have to do that twice. So I'm thinking about doing these individually by making just a little piece of block here which takes up the size of it, and then I'm going to make a female die for that, and I'm hoping that if I run this on a straight plane and then have all stops to hold it where it's got to be, and then add this bead in separate. Let's see how it goes. A lot of work. So now I've wrapped the tooling in 1mm, so that gives it its gap, and I'm just going to TIG those together now and then build like a little perimeter around it that's the inside of the die, which will be pressed into it. And I'm hoping that maybe I can even drill 2 holes and have a bolt and just bolt it through instead of trying to put it in the pull max and make a mess. So here's my scrap die setup, inner, outer, and 1mm perimeter. Just got to break them apart now. So breaking the two apart, you've got your female side, which I'm going to have to TIG the perimeter and then just grind it all with a die grinder. I've got my 1mm spacing, and I've got my upper die. So I've just got to figure out a way to clamp these together, and hopefully it all works. Well, I've added the threads for bolts to pull it through and holes in the upper. I think I've just got to do a little bit more welding to these thread plates just to brace it all up a bit better, but and I might give it a go. So this will be first try of it. I'm just going to put this die on just a blank bit of sheet, drill the 2 holes in it, that's my locating holes, and then put the bolts through and clamp it together, see what adjustments it's going to need. I'm assuming it's going to need a little bit of chamfering on the edges so it doesn't tear it or anything, but this will be the trial and error period of cleaning it all up. So that's the bolts passing through, grabbing the threads, and I'm just going to keep tightening them down. I might even fill this area with oil just to help it. I'm going to have to shave the Allen key down just a little bit, and that should help locate it perfectly and not let it track off anywhere side to side, because that's what's going to be crucial, is keeping that spacing identical the entire way. I'm squashed down about halfway and I've noticed there's a fair bit of tension. I don't really want to strip the bolts, that's why I went with such a large diameter bolt. So I think what it needs is a slit between the 2 holes just to relieve it, to let the metal go somewhere. And if that doesn't work, I'll try heating the area up red and then clamping it down. So that's what it looks like with that moderate pressure on there. So I'm just going to run a slit between these 2 holes now, and then I'll put it back in and see what it does. Well, that's clamped dead flat, so we'll see what it looks like when it comes out of there. Might have to extend this top piece to not let this warp in any direction. I might have to just make it a bigger perimeter, but we'll see. So that's fresh out of it. Seems to be pretty good. I wouldn't mind sharpening the edge of this die just so that when it's in its final resting point it's got a much sharper definition. But yeah, a bit of trimming of the excess and should be on. Now another way I could sharpen it is by sitting it back over the top and then just getting a chisel, just giving it a little cork around as a lap, and I'll see what that does. As expected, there was some marking after I did hit it with the chisel. That's just because it's bashing into little welded areas like this, so I'm just going to have to get the file, just give this a face and make it all nice and smooth. Okay, so although I've figured them out, the problem is they're directional and not the same either side, so I have to make the whole assembly again just to make the other side. Ah, they're flipped. God damn it. So what was that, 2.5 hours to make this? I got to repeat it again, but opposite for the other side. So just chasing around with the chisel now to sharpen it up, and you'll see the difference. It's sharp, it's got a rounded edge, so the first one will match, the other two won't. Alrighty, second attempt at going full size. I did the front section just before, just a few holes. Now I've marked the full piece out. I'll see how we go. And it's just easier to clamp the whole piece in the pan brake while I wind the die down. So it's just plopped out of the die, and it's nice and round. So I'll put the sheet back on the die itself and use the chisel, just hammer around the perimeter, and it really sharpens the edge up. I was wondering why the first one came out nice and the second ones were just giving me grief. I realised I forgot to slit them. So yeah, that'll do it. Alrighty, transferred to paper, and now to steel. Hopefully you can get it in this go. So I'm about halfway through, just pressing. So I've got to take it to the bench after this, obviously put it back into the die and chisel around it to sharpen them all back up. Of course, in usual fashion with anything to do with nuts, bolts or threads, the last bolt actually stripped the thread out in a 10mm plate somehow. I don't even use the rattle gun to tighten it up, I've been using the rattle gun to pull it out. So I put a nut on there and I also stripped that out as well, so this is fun. Always the last one. Fine, take the Allen key bolt out that's stripped, change it, put another bolt in with a nut on there. No, strips that out. Like, fuck's sake, mate, you only have to press 1mm sheet. The other bolt's doing fine. Like, what the fuck is your deal? Just gearing up for a massive rage quit here. Just changed the bolt out twice, and it stripped 2 bolts out. Oh my god, like, why? It's the last bolt hole. Just bloody press through. Never have to use the tooling again. And I got that one out, and there's a 4th nut and bolt sheared off. Why is it so hard? I don't understand. Another bolt. 5th time I'll try. Dumbest part is it's done the hardest job. It's already pierced through. It just has to push that tiny little edge down a touch more, and it just refuses. Just keeps snapping bolts in half. Like, what the hell? Look at that. On the 5th attempt, it actually works. I don't know if I've just somehow picked up 3 bolts that were ready to shear off, but Jesus Christ, this is just unnecessary. But just another day in the life. To what felt like an eternity, they're pressed. So I still have to put them upside down on the die, chisel around to sharpen them up, but so hard to line it up. So I just made a little adapter for the hammer stand just to sit the die back in, and that way I can sharpen them up. So the first 2 have been sharpened up, the rest have all rounded off. You can see, well, it doesn't want to go over the 3rd one, but the 2nd one nice and snug, nice and snug. Just all these just need to be just tidied up. Now most of them are pretty good, but there's just a few here like this and this that need to be brought down. They've all got to be 65mm parallel, so a few just got to be just enlarged slightly. Okay, so they're fairly uniform now. A tiny little bit of addressing Just unlike this one here, just need to sharpen just a flat spot in it. But that's just been really picky, but it's the way you got to be. I'm ready to trim all the edges down now, so I'll trim them all down to 5mm. Alright, so pretty happy with how they're looking. I'm going to trace the perimeter bead now and try and add that. Alright, so I'm going to try and add this perimeter bead, which is almost going to be impossible. It's so close to the edge. Do like a little practice lap just to make sure that I'm comfortable the way I'm going. If I want to change directions. Corners are also going to be hard. I might leave the corners and add them manually. The radius is just too tight. Might have to make up for tiny little dipping dives to get corners. Alrighty. There you go. Extremely nervous doing this because it's hours of work just to get these vents in, and it's a very high chance of stuffing it up by doing this. Alright, so that's one lap on there. It's just corner's not done, obviously. Probably see it better from this side. I'll keep going, do a few more laps on there. Okay, so successfully added the bead. It's good. It's a little bit of tidying up to do on the corners. I'll just do that over the bit of timber with the little hand dies. So I thought instead of just chopping that square out, may as well see how much of the panel you can make. So I got it pretty good. I'm going to try and add the fade off of the line up here, and then needs a little bit of curve down for the line before it folds back on itself, but pretty funny just to sort of freehand challenge yourself, see how far you can get with something. Just marking the top taper for the body line, which is this one. I have to bead roll that. I just got it roughed out. I just want to mark the door edges so I can roughly tip them on. So when I was just planishing the edge over, I noticed the line just dipped in a little bit. So I just made up a bit of tooling just to chuck in there so I can tap it back flat. So pretty well roughed out now. Now this piece is obviously for my car, which is a mess all round. The body line's ruined in all directions. It's pretty chaotic. So a little fresh piece for it. So it's next morning. I'm just being strategic with the last bit of sheet that I've got left. I got one more chance at the passenger side vent area, just the quarter piece. I've got the inner floor brace. I've got an inner sill piece, which is this guy, and the floor brace. And then I got a chance at a lower quarter as well, which will be here. Little trick I use, because it's such a pain in the ass to mark out all the angles and stuff, I just did a cardboard template of it from inside, pushed it up against it, traced everything out, and that way I can mark out my PCD spacing between the two dies. I've made them different, one's 55 and one's 60, so I can't get the two confused for either side. So I just mark out my PCD to bolt through, and just bolt it through, and should work. Now it looks like that, and I've got to sharpen it up by putting it back in this die upside down and then chisel around the perimeter. So here's the underside of them not sharpened up. I've got to chase around now and it's just sitting on its die, bolted to its little piece of angle. This is the top area that needs to be flattened off a bit more. The bottom's alright, and I'm just going to chase the edges and sharpen them right up because they're rounded. Probably thinking, oh, why don't you just use a normal hammer? I'm used to the weight of a panel beating hammer, so I've got an identical one that I've had for so many years, and I just use it as my generic hammer. I'm just so used to the weight that I can do repetitive swings quite easily. Okay, so I've sharpened up the perimeter and flattened the tops off. So that's marking out the bead, and you can see just how close it is to the edge of them holes. It's like 4 mil. Pretty tricky. These cars are all so different, like 45 mil to the edge of the bead. On my car it's 30. Like, what? How are they so different when they use the same presses? This side's the same, like at least it matches itself, it's 30 mil both sides, but the other two cars are both 45. So, a bit confused on that. How do they get such different results using the same tooling? So I'll make it the same as these two because majority rules, so no point making it 30 mil, then I go to an event one day and someone's like, ah, mate, your vent's 30 mil there, it's meant to be 45 mil. Now the bottom of the vent is flared up as it flows into the body line. How I did that, just put it in the pan brake and just clamp it along that edge and just gradually bump it along till it's got a transition on it. And then once I've got this little kick, I flip it over, mark my 11 mil body line that I'll put in the press brake and press that in. And then after that line's bumped into it, I take it back over to the pan brake and I start getting this transition to it using this whole piece as a big leverage point. I found it's actually so much easier to make these panels once you've got a larger excess thing than me trying to make the body lines separate. Just turns into a shit fight. So once we've got those areas sorted, I've got to add the fold for the bottom side of this line, which tapers around. It tapers large to small and then fades off into nothing. So just give it a quick check on the car, and it's fitting good where I want it. I'll just leave it at this stage until I unpick the existing quarter. That way I can tighten up all these edges and stuff. There's no welds or anything that have been done on this yet. So all in all, pretty happy with the results, given it was just pieces of scrap laying around, just welded together. My next piece I want to attack is this cowl area, because these are also a little bit rotted. So this will be, I dare say, the same tooling setup, and then another pretty deep perimeter bead. I'm going to see, I might end up with this style, get the individual pieces laser cut, and then stack them all together, get this perimeter laser cut, and then put that on there, plug all the individual pieces to it, and then get an opposite side made, like recessed into like 5 mil. That way I've got a whole thing where I can clamp it all at once, do a few bolt sets in there, and then just clamp the whole thing, because they're different left and right. Again, bloody Mazda. So I'd like to make this cowl area and then clamp them in at the end. I'll probably post up another video once I'm finished with the bonnet. I had another play with the bonnet and pretty happy with the results on that one. I've just got to add the catch and a few other little things before the Rio can get turned fully over and locked in. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.